all hear me? Usually American accent, this is not much of a problem. So yes, I have a very short amount of time to tell you everything that happened to you in the last 15,000 years, and also why women scientists are awesome. So we will move quickly through that. So this is a little bit of a book talk. This is something that I just wrote a book on, so if you're interested, it's there. But basically, everything is killing you. Some of us may have suspected this, some of us may have kind of seen this coming. And what I do is dig up dead people. I'm an archaeologist, so I'm interested in looking at the long story, the history of basically us, and I do that by looking at the bodies, sort of the evidence that is actually written into our bones. So if we take our sort of modern selves with our, sort of obesity crises and our air pollution and everything that is wrong with terrestrial TV right now, what happened? What happened to our species? We had this beautiful hunter-gatherer lifestyle going on. We were like super lean. We had great leg muscles. The selfie probably not actually invented. So what happened? And it turns out that if you get enough dead bodies together, you can actually start to answer some of these questions. And that's kind of what my science is. So let's take a look. The last 15,000 years is an amazing story. This is 2% of the time our species has been on this planet. The last 2%, 98% of the time we were doing something else. It's a long story, basically. By the way, this is what happens if you take professors to Jordan. They watch the graduate students dig out the jeeps. This is what archaeology is actually really like. So let's get started. Revolutions. 15,000 years ago, thereabout, we did the first revolution, which is settling down. Living in one place. And this actually fundamentally changes our body. If you think about bones and teeth as sort of, evidence of how we move and live, you can see that bone is a use it or lose it type of thing. If you're using your muscles, they're interacting with the bone, and we can actually start to see changes in our bodies. So our hunter-gatherer ancestors, they're walking around a lot, they're using their legs. Guess what you don't have to do if you're no longer chasing herds of reindeer? You're living in a settled place. That's right, we got skinny legs. There's another revolution, and I think a lot of us have probably heard more about this than anything else. Hands up, people have heard of paleo diet? Yeah, about that. I hope you like porcupine. As paleo diet is one of those things. It's like, we spent literally millions of evolutionary years of sort of our history trying not to starve to death. And apparently that's not good enough anymore. It needs to come in a foil wrapper with no gluten. But so this is the second revolution. And this one is farming. This is Müge. She is sitting in she's leaning in central Anatolia. She is growing experimental ancient wheat, which was very boring, so I took a picture and sort of wandered away for her to finish her science. But Müge is scientifically recreating something that had a huge effect on our physical bodies. And this is grain. This is a solid source of calories that we basically can sit down in our little sedentary places and consume. This is an amazing shift for us. But it messes us up. Does anyone have a vague idea that something might be going terribly wrong with this jaw? Yes. Brush your teeth. Really. I'm very serious about the toothbrushing thing. This is your jaw on carbs. So one of the things we do is we change our diet, and actually changes the types of diseases we get. One of those diseases is caries. If you eat a bunch of sugary, carby foods, it changes the plaque sort of in your mouth. It changes sort of the pH balance and lets bacteria grow in the plaque, which start chewing holes in your teeth. We start to see cavities, appear with kind of the invention of agriculture. And of course, that's not the only thing that changes. We've got sort of all sorts of health-related changes, our new skinny legs, we've got more food, but maybe it's not as good. And this is something that we can actually pull out in the archaeological record. Of course, all these revolutions had to come to something. And the thing that they do for us is they build more people. All those extra carbs, they were the greatest thing we ever did if the end game is making more of us. So as we start to sort of come together and live in these dense places, we do a bunch of things. Not all of them are good for us. This is the most boring slide I could find. You're welcome. This is the reality of archaeology. It's beige. It is always beige. This is actually the next revolution, and it's the thing that has the biggest impact on our bodies in the last 15,000 years. It's storage. It's Tupperware. It's Neolithic Tupperware. But the interesting thing about this storage is we get all these people together. We have all these new resources. And what happens is we start to get the resources not that everyone gets to have, just like out in the open for everybody to share. These are storage bins from an 8,000-year-old site called Çatalhöyük, and they are in someone's house. That means they are someone's resources. And if they are someone's, they are not yours. This is the major difference. We actually can start to see essentially inequality is the thing that affects our bodies. It leads to malnutrition, it leads to diseases, and these diseases end up in the bones. So looking at this trajectory, we get huge amounts of epidemics and plagues and all these things that are killing us. Why would we do it? And I've got one last story that might kind of explain this. And we have jumped all the way from the beginnings of cities to the end. Well, it's not the ends of cities, it's London. These are match workers. They are standing over vats of white phosphorus. I do not recommend standing over a vat of white phosphorus. It's poisonous, and it can actually seep through your tissue. So these men are making matches. You can see they got these little trays. They're going to put the matches in and dip them to have this sort of strikeable heads. This is what happens to their jaws. That's phossy jaw. Now, this was a well-known condition. This was something that people actually knew about. And this is the thing that's really interesting about cities. We have all these people, and we have this inequality that drives diseases, pollution, poor living standards. And we have things like this, where these people's jaws are literally rotting in their mouths. Gross. But what happens is, in a city, you start to see the stirrings of things that start to try and change the way we live. So this is the Match Girls strike. This is the beginning of organized labor movement, and it was actually led by women. It was led by pioneering, campaigning woman journalist who saw what was going on with these people and started a force for change. And that's one of the things that actually living in cities has allowed us to do, possibly not fast enough. But what I really want to talk about, because we're here on Ada Lovelace Day, is of course all of the women who have led up to these kinds of amazing discoveries. So I thought I'd start with a Nazi-snubbing, sword-fighting Muslim woman, because she's awesome and probably my favorite. This is Helen Arney, 1936 Berlin Olympics, one of the first 2 Muslim women Olympians ever. Yes, she's an archaeologist. She trained Ufuk Esin, who, yes, is the smallest of the people visible. And Ufuk Esin is the woman who started the dig that I now work on. She trained Miraban Özbaşaran. That's Dino. Dino's the site dog. Dino's awesome. She trained Miraban, and it ends up, with a legacy of me. I am standing on the shoulders of these amazing women who brought scientific archaeology so we could find these things. And it's not just me. Obviously for job purposes, I kind of wish it would be sometimes. But there are amazing women. And so the other project that I'm part of is Trailblazers. And this is an organization that is dedicated to bringing out the histories of some of these women. And they are awesome. So we got Zonia Baber, looks awesome with a mattock, suffragist, huge rights campaigner. We got Honor Frost, may or may not have fought an octopus, this is unclear. But pioneer in underwater archaeology. Virginia Grace wore a snake, why not? And we've got these amazing stories. She's a sharpshooter. That's just a thing. She's sort of, this is Jane Delfoy, I have to say, she's one of my favorites. She once got ambushed by sort of about 6 dudes while on her way to a site in Persia. But she was really good. She had 2 revolvers, and she said, yeah, come back with 6 more friends. I love this lady. But these are the stories of women that get lost somewhere in our history. We talk about, old white dudes in pith helmets, which is a cool subject. But there's so much more. So right now, Trailblazers is always looking for more information, more stories. And we are running the Raising Horizons exhibit, which you can see it is touring around the country. And we want people to sort of look at these women and look at their histories and look at the science they're doing and just realize you're not alone. Science has been done by women for a really long time. And that's our message for Ada Lovelace Day.